All right. Now, aside from pizza, we know that the result of Protestants gerrymandering the districts and changing proportional representation to first past the post meant that they got about 80 to 85% of the local governments under Protestant control, whereas before they'd only gotten 2 out of 3. And what that gives us is clearly becomes a Protestant-dominated government for all of Northern Ireland. One of their prime ministers, which for Northern Ireland and the way it was set up, would be a lot like a governor. Although prime minister is often what we think of as more being like the president of the United States. This is kind of the top leader within Northern Ireland. And he was the first of these prime ministers. And what he said quite publicly in a speech, he's not trying to hide this, all I boast of is that we, meaning Northern Ireland, are a Protestant parliament. Parliament is kind of like our Congress. It's a legislature, makes the laws, and a Protestant state. That doesn't seem to leave a whole lot of room for the Catholics in Northern Ireland. And he doesn't mean to leave room for the Catholics in Ireland. Yeah. Prime Minister. Yeah, in your notes there, first Prime Minister. Yeah, thanks for asking that, Xander. Otherwise, you had to pull that out of the caption. Okay, and then the rest, that next box is going to be the rest of his quote. And as I said, Parliament is a legislature, and legislatures make the laws for a country or a state or a province. And as I also said, this means that we've got a Protestant-dominated government. And this government actively discriminated against Catholics in Northern Ireland. As a few examples, if you wanted a government job, say maybe you wanted a job on a crew that built and repaired roads, or maybe an office job, if construction's not your thing. Maybe you wanted to be a clerk in a government office. Or if you tried to find housing, say, and this was pretty common in the United Kingdom, they had what were called council houses. And that was government-provided housing for people who had trouble affording it. And so if you were a poor Catholic in Northern Ireland and you wanted a government job, or you wanted an apartment in a public housing block, good luck. Most all of that went to Protestants, even in parts of Northern Ireland that were majority Catholic. Miss Riley. Yes, you may scan the thing, and I will get you a pass. They also persecuted Catholics. Now, don't confuse persecution with prosecution. Prosecution is being charged with a crime. Persecution is being singled out and treated badly because of who you are. Yeah, very much like that. I mean, African Americans faced very official persecution under Jim Crow and segregation. Yeah, exactly, Xander. It's the same kind of thing. It's not because of anything you did. It's because of who you are, and it's not fair. As one example of this, if the Protestant government didn't like you, they could say, we think you're a member of the Irish Republican Army. We're going to arrest you. We're going to keep you in jail for a long time without actually charging you of a crime or giving you a trial. And we're going to give you additional punishment without a trial. Flogging means to be beaten or whipped. So not only are you going to be kept imprisoned without a trial, but you're going to be beaten. You're going to see a little later in a video about the Troubles that this is called internment. And if you were a member of one of the nationalist parties, this doesn't mean you're a member of the Irish Republican Army. The Irish Republican Army was outlawed in Northern Ireland and also in the Republic of Ireland. Just belonging to a party that advocated for splitting from the United Kingdom was not allowed, and you could not have public meetings. This is the kind of thing that would not fly in the United States. We have constitutional amendments that are part of your Bill of Rights that make this something that can't happen. The government cannot keep you without charging you with a crime, and they can't use physical punishment on you without a trial. And even then, it's pretty limited. About the only kind of physical punishment that's used anymore is capital punishment or execution, and that has its own very complicated process. And also, your very First Amendment allows you to have public meetings, even if you are a group with really unpopular ideas. And now we are getting closer and closer to the outbreak of the Troubles. This starts in the 1960s. And it starts with a peaceful civil rights movement. People marched, they carried signs, they wanted civil rights, they wanted real democracy in Northern Ireland, which they thought meant that their parties should be able to meet, elections should be fair. Now, for the Pear Deck, tell me, where else in the world was an important civil rights movement happening in the 1960s? Let's just take 30 seconds. I don't want you guys search it up. Just give me your best shot. Yeah. Washington, D.C., yes, which was certainly a local focus. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech. But the United States, or America, which somebody has added for humor. But yes, it's the United States of America. That is the site of our own civil rights movement. Thank you. At the same time, advocating for equal rights and democracy for African Americans. Some of this takes place before we have the Voting Rights Act, and African Americans are pretty systematically excluded from voting. Now, as these peaceful marches are not having a great deal of success, we also see that violent groups begin to become active. And this also happens in the United States. There are extremist groups alongside the civil rights movement. Although I want to be very careful about how we compare them. Probably the comparison most people would very quickly jump to would be to compare the Black Panthers to the Irish Republican Army. Those two things are really very different. To the extent that the Black Panthers were armed, often it was just patrolling their own communities. They weren't initiating conflicts. They just saw themselves as taking purely defensive action. What we're going to see with these violent groups is they get in gunfights with the military and the police. They blow things up. And it's not just the Catholics. Lily, I'm sorry. I need you to take your earbuds to the office, please. We also see this on the Protestant side. We're going to see Ulster Volunteers and other armed groups that we'll call paramilitaries. And on the Catholic side, of course, we see the Irish Republican Army is still active and comes roaring back. Now, as a brief overview of the Troubles themselves. It's a period of time that lasts for about 3 decades. It is marked by multiple terrorist bombings. Many people are assassinated. And there's a lot of guerrilla warfare, which is kind of like the ambushes and hit and run attacks by often small groups of armed people. That would be violent groups also become more active. It should be different, but or did it? Oh, there we go. Sorry, I skipped one of the things. All right, on that last slide, my apologies for that. All right, the police of Northern Ireland also become more violent, which is going to be on. Okay. And really, in some respect, one of the reasons the British military was pretty good helping the United States fight in Afghanistan was that they had pretty good history from the Troubles of having to look out for roadside bombs and improvised explosive devices, which we heard of as IEDs most of the time. They dealt with this a lot. And although, as you can tell, a lot of this fighting was in urban areas. What that's going to lead us up to now is a video about the Troubles. Now, I will give you more time to work on this. For right now, I want you to get started. I'm going to play the video on the big screen until we get to our time for the exit slip. Your video notes are going to pick up right here. Mostly, they follow the video in order, and you've got word banks to help you pick the items that you need to answer your questions. Where we will pick up later, the way the timing of the video works out is for the longer answers, you'll be able to watch the video at your own speed. This part, you'll kind of come back and forth to as you go through the videos. I just want you to be able to kind of line up the different players that you've got. Each of the terms is going to be used one time, right? So you will use all of them, but you will use each term only one time. So I don't want you to focus on these squares at first. As you hear about a group like Brian Faulkner, figure out where he goes and put him in. Some of these you already know because we've talked about nationalists and unionists.